One big team. Let's go. Today on the pod, I had Jono Zissi. Jono is the head coach of Torrey Pines High School out in San Diego, California. He's an incredible coach with that program and a absolute force in the lacrosse community beyond. We talk everything about coaching philosophy and life philosophy, what he's doing for his players and what it means for them to really be their best. I think this episode has a ton of value for players, especially parents, coaches, young professionals, anybody that's in a position to have an influence on others and maybe have a role in organizational leadership, especially. So I hope you all get a lot of great insights from it and maybe give Torrey Pines High School Lacrosse a follow on Instagram. They absolutely crush it. And I would really appreciate a like, a subscribe, a share, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It would be appreciated on our end. Like I said, we're trying to grow this thing and have a bigger positive impact. So I hope you all are grateful and have a great rest of the day. Take care. Jono, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. I got a good feeling that all the people that listen, parents, players, coaches, whoever finds this, will get a lot of good stuff out of it. So thanks for hopping on.
Awesome. Glad to be here. And yeah, I hope so. Sure do.
I love it. So I got 5:00 East Coast time. You're joining us from the West Coast. But what are some things today on this Tuesday that you can express some gratitude for that you've experienced today?
Yeah, I feel fortunate to be where I am. Lacrosse has given me so many opportunities. It's taken me to some crazy places, and it's allowed me to, live a lifestyle that I'm living. This is what I kind of do full time. And most importantly, it just gives me the opportunity and the platform to mentor kids. And that's what I've always wanted to do. I started out as a teacher, taught for 8 years, and then now I'm just doing the coaching thing full time. So, I'm happy and fortunate to be able to do that for a living. They always say, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And so here I am, but it's all good. And living in San Diego, it's a win-win for me,
That's a good deal, man. I'm pretty fired up just from that. So yeah, why don't you give us a little bit of the background? I have a pretty good idea of where you're from, but I think it'd be good for the listeners, both, growing up, playing days, and then how you found yourself out West.
Yeah, I'll do a little brief bio. I grew up in New England, in Boston, played a multitude of sports, really was into football and hoops all through high school, played lacrosse. Didn't start till 9th grade, way behind the curve. My dad had played in college at University of New Hampshire, and so I knew of it. It was kind of a late bloomer, and then I went to prep school for a year. I PG'd, trying to keep my options open, and that's when I kind of really fell in love with lacrosse and actually got good. And then I played at Tufts University. I was there Coach Daly's first year. We kind of came in together, and the program was sort of a dumpster fire, and we both kind of built that thing from the ground up. And, it was a great experience. The school was 5 minutes from where I grew up. And while it was a great education and a great experience to play there, I had to kind of get out. And when I graduated, I pretty much drove to the furthest place I could find, which was San Diego. Set up shop, got into grad school, and lacrosse had just become a sponsored school sport. And what turned into like a 3-month, vacation became, here I am 17 years later, kind of still out here coaching. And the genesis of it all was after grad school, I taught. Adrenaline had started leagues. I got a head coaching job at the age of 22, and just immersed myself in it. And the timing, everything in life is about timing. But I was here at the right time, and it was a great match. And it's just a tough place to leave if you've ever been out here. So yeah, that's the quick 411.
That's great. Yeah, I went one time and I did a coaching thing with Legends, as we were talking about earlier, out in Palm Springs. And yeah, I almost did not leave. It was pretty incredible. I definitely got to get back out there again. I didn't see myself asking this question, but now I'm personally really curious. What were you like as a player, and what specifically did your playing experience help you in your coaching process and your development there? Is there anything specific, maybe your on-field success or maybe off the field things that really impacted you in the way that you coach Torrey Pines now?
Yeah, I think twofold. I think because I was such a multi-sport guy and lacrosse was such a foreign sport to me, I had to be the smartest guy on the field, because I was using what I had in basketball to understand the game, and football, the toughness, and, being small, I had to work for everything. So I think the way I play was super cerebral because I had to be smarter because I was so late to the sport. And then just the toughness thing, being an undersized guy, I always had to play with a chip on my shoulder, and I had a bad attitude of sorts. Like I just was ready to kill everybody and work hard on everybody. And I think those things have followed me in my coaching. And it also helped that I was left-handed. So that was, thank God, because I don't even know where I'd be if I wasn't. But yeah, all of those things have, usually the best players in the world aren't the greatest coaches. I know how it is to sort of have to learn on the fly and work for things. I think that's really helped me as a coach. The fact that I wasn't maybe the greatest player, but certainly wasn't going to get outworked, and I won't let my kids get outworked either.
Love that. So the other thing that you mentioned was like, you become a head coach at 22, and then you really just immerse yourself in the process of becoming the best coach that you can be. And I'm curious to hear if there's anything specific that's, when you look back on, you're like, yeah, those early years and just the commitment to being on the field every day, or the early years and the mistakes. But I think immersion of just in any field that you want to get into is like probably the best strategy. And I know for me, I've been on the field now basically every single day for 5.5 years. And I mean, the growth has been immense, and it's because of just getting in the reps and stuff. So can you kind of touch on that from your experience?
Yeah, no, I think, the biggest thing was sort of a culture shock. San Diego to Boston, just the mindset in general was tough for me to sort of pick up on. And lacrosse had just become a varsity sport. So you're dealing with kind of that holdover club mentality of just rec ball. But again, it's, Coach Elliott in college, his whole thing was we always would play fast and play loose. And his whole thing was make mistakes. I want to make mistakes. And, certainly I made a few, at a young age, but I think, I went to graduate school and I read all these philosophical books of how to be a teacher and, all these case studies I read and commented on. And until I got in the classroom, you're not prepared for anything until you just do it. And so, yeah, I was fortunate to have a little bit of breathing room to make a few mistakes. And at the end of the day, and I'll say this throughout the podcast, as long as kids know how much you care, okay, that's when they'll realize or care about how much you know. But the kids knew I loved them and I was all in. And it was that part was what kept the ship going. It's like, oh, this guy's crazy. He's 22. He's like from the East Coast. Like he's so intense, but they knew I had their back. And at the end of the day, like I'll hang my hat on that to this day. My kids know I run through a wall for them. Totally. So until you build those relationships, though, you can't be that hard on kids. You can't demand things until they know that you really like love them and have their back. So, but yeah, looking back, I laugh. I'm like, dear God. So
that's great. I think to your point there, yeah, that connection is definitely the prerequisite to any change in a group setting. It's so necessary. It's also the best part. Like it really is. That's what makes everything so fun. If we were all just, robots out there and we're not building those just deep connections and better understanding of each other and going through those shared experiences, it's really not that great. Now the game itself is medicine and it's awesome, but that's really what makes it special. I got a question. The first senior class, are you still close with those guys?
I actually am. And it's funny because when I started coaching, someone gave me a couple words of advice. And one of them was just be the coach that you needed at that age. And it was like, I remember myself, like I was crazy about sports, and maybe the San Diego kids aren't as like into sports, but I needed certain types of guys in my life. And I also reacted poorly to other guys. And I was like, that was my framework. It's like, what did this guy do that I didn't like? And what are the coaches that I loved? What did they do well? And that was sort of my, my true north, is like guiding, like, how am I doing my first year? Because again, I had no experience and was just cutting things. I had the Tufts playbook that I just taken with me from senior year. We're running the same offense. I'm starting to talk like Coach Daly, which was like, God, that was alarming. But I was like, so it's good. But that was it, man. Just be the coach that I needed when I was that age.
Yeah, the one similarity, when I got started same age and not as a head coach, just as an assistant. And last week, like 4 days ago, I just got dinner with all of my guys from my first senior class, and they all just graduated. 3 of them are going back for a 5th year, captains at their respective programs, and just unbelievable connection with that group. And when I went in there, I was like, all right, it's very similar. It's like, how would I want to be coached here? And it was, well, I'm only really a few years older than these guys. So don't act like you know it all. Just let them know you care. And I came in and I said, guys, I just spent 5 years trying to win a national championship. Not that CNU was really at that point yet, but my mindset was like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And now I don't have a team. So I'm looking for a team that really wants to go. And they've like, we've never won a championship. Like, we'll take you. Let's go. Let's do it. And it's really amazing to look back on, and spending the evening with them the other night, having dinner. It was just like incredibly special. So always good for anyone just to have a reminder of like, who are the people in your circle and what are you doing to invest in them in that long-term relationship. The other thing you said about be the coach that you wish you had. And I know I have a phrase that I have written down. It's like, we serve the person that we once were. And in regards to that, can you think of anything specific? What type of coach was best for you? And maybe it was Coach Daly and you had that, or little pieces of that, but like, how would you have liked to have been coached in high school if you could think back to it?
I think the biggest thing for me was like, it was all the things that didn't have to do with lacrosse. Like I was going to play wall ball. I was going to shoot on my own. I was going to lift. Those were givens. It was, I needed to be a better person. I needed to be a better teammate. I needed to see the bigger picture, why we were doing certain things. I needed to kind of open my head. And Coach Daly, to his credit, is really, what he's known for is just being a general manager and running a program. It's less about X's and O's with him. And we had a lot of hard conversations. There was a lot of tough love. It wasn't the most harmonious thing, but it was what I needed. And again, like, I'm trying to give our kids a full experience. Like, yes, we'll watch film. Yes, we'll have, offenses and defenses and X's and O's and skill development, but really I'm focusing on, what can I do to help you be a better holistic version of yourself? And I needed it so bad. And that's what the name of the game is. Anyone can teach you lacrosse. Anyone can put in an offense and roll a ball out. Like, that's not it for me. So.
No, I'm with you there completely. We got to dive into some things that you said about Coach Daly and just make mistakes as such a paradigm shift for a young player. And I do a lot of stuff now in mental performance with the kids. And like, the number one thing is, I'm just so afraid of making a mistake. And it's like, dude, well, that is the name of the game. You can't be afraid of making a mistake. You got to be wanting to go and make a play. Yeah. And nothing really that bad happens when you throw the ball away in a summer game. Like, you'll be okay. But it is really interesting. So I would love to hear kind of more about that model there. And then let's talk about that. And then we'll come back to Torrey Pines and kind of the experience thing and what you're trying to provide for those guys as a sense of like holistic development and the full spectrum experience. Cause I'm fully on board with that. But yeah, can you touch more on, and I'm sure Coach Daly is one of those mentors for you. Can you touch on what that relationship means to you, what it provided you, and then maybe get into that specific, like, make mistakes, play fast, play loose type thing?
Yeah. You just don't want to be lines on a page, and the sport lends itself to being creative. And, we want the kids to play to their personality. And if you have certain strengths, like, you don't have to throw the ball or shoot it overhand if you can get the pass there underhand, or if it's, if you're shooting around a guy that's approaching you, shoot it sidearm. I mean, I don't have any issue with those things. And the mistakes, to a certain point, Coach Daly would always say, we want to make mistakes of commission, not omission. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're trying to make a play, you're trying to do a great thing, you're hustling. We don't want lazy mistakes where you're not breaking down on defense, or you're just lobbing the ball out of bounds. Like, there's a difference. And certainly don't want to repeat the same mistakes, but there's so much pressure in today's society, as with these kids, and there's so much stress that, like, they don't need that from the head guy. They need to have a safe place. And so you want to just be their biggest fan. And we've, you and I spoke offline earlier, but we lost 3 championships in a row by 1 goal, and to teams that we should have beat, the teams that we had beaten in the regular season, where we were the heavy favorite. And when you play at a place like Torrey Pines, it's like, if you beat someone, great, you did your job. And if you don't, it's like, oh my God, you blew it. And the kids have this innate, like, insane version of pressure already on them. Mm-hmm. And I realized that when we lost three in a row, I was like, God, these kids are so nervous. They're playing not to lose. They're not playing to win. And we had to kind of do a cultural shift. That was when it kind of clicked. It's like, all right, we can't play not to lose, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think
you can't drive a car with the emergency brake on, as I kind of said to the kids, like, this isn't going to work.
Yeah. It reminds me of this one little story I heard about Bruce Springsteen, and he was like on his summer tour, and this guy was following him for the summer, like a journalist, and he was in back with the band, and he was just like killing it all summer. And he was like, 50, he's like on his older side, he's performing, and every night he's just getting better and better. And the journalist asked him, he's like, Bruce, like, how do you do it, man? Like, every night you're just on it. Like, what is it? And he goes, every night before I go out on the stage, I remind myself, this is the biggest show of my life. But I also remind myself, it's just rock and roll. And that for me is kind of, I think there's a healthy balance there, right? I mean, you guys are super committed to being the best versions of yourselves and winning and getting it done and excellence. But you can't step on the field with that tension. You got to just go, oh yeah, it's just a game, and this is going to be so much fun. And that's helped me a lot, being like, this is my career. This is the end all be all. We got to do it all. And it's just a game, and it's just going to be a beautiful thing. And, and the chips will fall where they may. So I do like that as kind of a little antidote to give players from time to time.
100%. That's really it. And I think part of it too is trying to make practice as hard and stressful as possible. so the game isn't so overwhelming to some of the kids too. We've tried to do that as well. But yeah, that's in a nutshell. It is just a game at the end of the day. It's just kids throwing a ball in a net. It's, in its simplest form. But as well as anyone, like, we're not curing cancer, man. We're playing lacrosse, and I'm all for like learning and evolving and professional development. But at the end of the day, it's just lacrosse.
Yeah.
It's a simple sport. So sometimes I get myself worked up and start overthinking things. It doesn't need to be like that.
So that seems like a good kind of build up to what the bigger picture is for you as a coach. And I know we align on this, and I think there's a lot of great coaches that do. And hopefully this is the direction that sports are going in as a whole, especially at the youth level, that it's really the vehicle for personal development, community, as you said earlier, like being happy and thriving in your life, and using this as another tool in the toolbox per se. So can you talk about Torrey Pines, and also for the people on the East Coast with our hotbed, who are unaware of how dominant Torrey Pines is, not just on the field, but the experience as a whole? Can you kind of explain the background of Torrey Pines and then lead into, how you put the premium on the off-field experience and development as well?
Yeah, I think, the Torrey Pines lacrosse experience is kind of what when we took over the job, that was what our mission was to make it a full experience. And our pillars have been the same: character, culture, community, since we started. And those are our focal points. And I took the job, and they'd always been talented, but the coach had gotten fired. And when I took the job, I ran into a couple of teachers on campus, and they were like, "Are you the new coach?" And I was like, "Yeah," all excited and pumped. And they were like, "Good luck with those kids." And really the problem was the culture, was the attitude, was the entitlement, was, not the most polite kids, not the most high achieving in the class. Not, now if you look at our program, it's like every year we're doing 70 hours of community service, mandatory. And we're doing it with great organizations that the kids take pride in, and then they're doing it on their own. There's no forced hand. They look forward to it. We've been partners with Friends of Jacqueline since I started. We've been working with the One Love group. We work with Harlem Lacrosse in LA. We're always doing stuff at the Veterans Hospital or Feeding San Diego. We're as big as we can be in the community. Every one of our kids helps coach a youth team in the spring. They're an assistant coach. So they're giving back. They played in those youth programs. Those kids are all coming to our game Friday nights. It's packed. They're playing at halftime on our field. It's the full community feel and experience, and our kids are using their platform to do more than just play lacrosse. Yeah. And that, to me, is really what it's all about. And so that's kind of what we've dove into, really the holistic approach. And yeah, our kids are doing well lacrosse. They're going back to playing college, and some are going to Division I schools, which is awesome, and we're proud of them. And some are playing MCLA, and some will never play again. But the thing that I love is going to these guys' weddings after the fact, having these guys come back, and it's good and bad, but it's like they're playing in college and all they say is, "God, Torrey Pines lacrosse was the best thing in my life," which is a little bit goofy, but it's also rewarding. It's like you want them to have that special experience that you helped create for them. So,
yeah, and I mentioned this before we really started rolling, but having this conversation with you was on my list to do as I was hoping to take over a local program here, right? And now that didn't happen, and that's just a different direction that program decided to go in, which is fine. But this is exactly what I think every program should be modeling off of. And the greatest thing is, like, all of these things are completely in your control, in the coach's control, to advert some of your attention and energy into the off-field development. And again, the people that I listen to, and I'm sure the people that you listen to for your professional development, personal development, are talking about these things, right? You need to have mental performance training at some level in your program. You need to have leadership development. You need to have community service. You need them to understand that their self-worth is much more than a lacrosse player, and for them to be happy and thriving. So, I'm almost more excited that things went down the way they did, because this conversation probably would have been on you and me, and it wouldn't have been online. And I probably would have just been like, maybe selfishly taking all your little tidbits and using them for my program. But now hopefully this will reach more coaches and parents as well, because, parents can do this at the rec level, right? They can say, "Hey, coach, we got 3 months with the spring and the boys. We do 2 practices a week. What do you guys think about going to a local food bank, or doing a gear drive, or doing something?" And so I'm just so grateful that we're having this conversation. And I mean, I really mean that. It just sounds like such a great model for others to build off of. I'm sure I would be surprised if you haven't had other people say that to you.
Yeah, you got to sort of, you have to make what's important to you like important to them. And so how do you do that? And like anything, you have to practice like you do lacrosse skills, things that, so if we're never going to do service, if we're never going to do book reports, if we're never going to have hard conversations or teach leadership, it's not just going to happen through osmosis. So it's, we want the kids to sort of, you have to work as hard to be a great teammate as you do to be a great player. Like you don't just become a great teammate without working at it. Like you have to know what that requires and then practice certain skills. And we usually do book reports with the kids, and we'll send them just articles to read and chat. And again, you got to just go for the holistic approach and making it a focal point. Like we have to practice these things.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm all on board the holistic approach. That's like I'm getting my website finished up for my academy, and like, the leader and holistic player development as far as this region, that's part of my goal. That's on my board in my room. And to lead that way and to help develop players in that way and to have an impact on the community so that others can follow, so I'm completely aligned. I'm getting all fired up about it, but I want to go back to when you said you were a graduate student, and I'm assuming you're getting a master's in teaching, whatever it is, and you're reading the books on teaching philosophy. I'm sure there's some coaching philosophy. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. But what are some of those things that stuck out with you, or that whether it's a specific book or a phrase or one that was really impactful? But one of the things that I really tried to introduce to my younger players earlier on is reading for the sake of, like learning. And I think in school, sometimes I never felt like I was reading the books because I was like, oh, I have to do it. And versus like, hey, if you read this book, you're going to pick up ways to be a better version of yourself, a better teammate, this and that. And once I got on that train, I really never got off, So I'm just curious, were you always a reader and looking for those tidbits to be a better leader? Or was it then that the first time that started happening for you?
Kind of always a big reader. I mean, knowledge is power, and just sometimes for me, like having the kids hear the same message from somebody else, whether it's a guest speaker or a book, it resonates with them for whatever reason. But I do like to read a lot of these books, and even if I don't enjoy them, it's part of the due diligence of like seeing what else is out there. All right, that's an interesting take that guy does that way. Whether it's a book on Nick Saban or whether it's a book on, Coach K or whoever, it's just interesting to sort of see what other guys are doing and compare notes. And so again, it's a life skill reading, just like community services, just like, giving back is. And so all these things that we're equipping the kids with and sort of tasking them to do are skills that they take with them also. We never give them like anything crazy, but I think they enjoy it. They'll never admit it, but I know that they do. It's become in vogue. It's become cool at our program to participate and read your book report. And we have things called Thankful Thursday, where kids will get up after practice and say what they're thankful for. And again, it's not goofy. It's, you're a goofball if you're thinking it's not cool. And so that's all the pendulum swings of making these things that I think and the coaching staff thinks are important with our leaders. It's taken time, but it's awesome.
Yeah.
If I'd love you to come to a practice, I think you'd be kind of like, this is interesting.
I mean, I'm basically booking a flight right now because Thankful Thursday literally has my name written all over it. And to that note, one of the things, and I've given this advice to so many former players who are in college, and we talk, and a lot of times they have to give a speech to the team about something. And you know what? I've gotten reached out to a bunch of different guys, different programs with no, hey, if you ever have to give a speech, call me. Right. But that's some of the reasons that they've reached out. And every time I just go, well, always start with gratitude.
Yep.
Because one, it's going to center you a little bit, but like, it's going to change the energy in the room. Hey guys, I'm just really grateful that I have the opportunity to speak in front of you all. And I'm really grateful to be a part of this team. It completely shifts the energy. And I mean, I got my podcast. Will probably come out tomorrow. I did a whole solo episode on gratitude. So I'm in it. I love that stuff. So Thankful Thursday is incredible, and making it a habitual thing for them. Super powerful. So I'm all in on that. And then the other one, make it cool. And I think this one, I mean, again, could this apply to anybody? Yeah, but this one's really good for the coaches, trying to make the uncool cool, right? Trying to make the mundane process. How do you get your guys to do it and thrive in it, right? And find enjoyment in it. And one of the thoughts that I had, like my first year in there, I give out like a nutrition packet. And I'm like, if you want to get bigger, you got to eat 6 meals a day. Like, this is what it looks like. And like 2 kids did it. And then I realized, I'm like, all right. And I had the exact phrase. I said, they will not do it until it's cool. And I looked at the seniors that year and I said, it's on you. We got to make this cool to pack an extra lunch so that you can eat before lifting and to bring your protein powder. Like, we got to make this cool that you guys are eating right after practice and you're just more prepared and you meal prep a little bit. And that group really took it on themselves to try to do it. And like, there was a huge shift over a couple years. And it was like, guys would come in and they'd see the guy who's committed to the bigger school. And he'd be like, yeah, guys, you got to get your eating dialed in. And making it cool, man. So in regards to that, as a coach at a great program out there, how are some of the ways that you find making it cool? Like, what's the challenge, but also like, what are some strategies that you've had success with?
So just working together with the team to kind of align visions and goals and what's important to us in our culture. So culture plays. And then we have 2 team awards that we give out every weekly. And they don't go to the guy that scores the most goals or whatever. It's things that highlighted what we are looking for. Guys that dove after loose balls, guys that hustled, that got tough ground balls, guys that got hockey assists. And for some guys, it's like guys that made the right decision on certain plays that, instead of forcing it, if a specific kid is doing what's specific to him, and he keeps improving on it, we'll reward that. And again, the kids want those awards and they want the recognition. And so like, again, rewarding it, but also sharing in it with them that, hey, we chose these core values together, guys. You were right there. You picked them. You're almost obviously influencing them, and then they own it too. But to your earlier point about gratitude, I mean, obviously changing the verbiage from have to get to practice is huge. And the one silver lining about COVID, especially for us, our 2020 team was a juggernaut, that got derailed. It was just COVID. The kids came back hungry because they had to live without lacrosse. And for us, it was February 2nd. We were told we were having a season. Our seniors had all been packed it in. And all of a sudden, oh my God, we have a season now. It was just, automatically natural, organic gratitude, which I've never seen anything like it. But how could they not be?
Yeah,
so
that was
my silver lining of COVID.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I thought also these are the only teenagers, at least in modern history, that have experienced something like that. And what my hope is that it's going to, for the class of 2020 specifically, and all the other people that were in high school and college and all that stuff, like it will make them more resilient for the future, and that's usually tends what happens when we get challenged and we work to overcome them. I want to talk about visions and goals. And I think you said alignment, which I'm a big fan of, which is like, that's basically your job. Hey, here guys, let's get a clear vision for what we want to achieve, what we want to look like. Let's get our daily goals. And then let's really get into alignment. Right. And you're kind of playing the role of the orchestrator and helping them have clarity in those things, both for the program, and I think you can go to like the core values of the program. How do you monitor the alignment, but then also for yourself, like, do you have your specific vision for your life, for your current profession, your goals, and like, what does living in alignment look like for you? I gave you like 8 different questions there. So.
Yeah. I think for me, like, as you and I talked offline, but, again, nobody cares how much you know till they know how much you care. Number one. So the kids have to know that myself and all of our coaches literally love them and nothing's personal, and we have their back to make any progress with constructive criticism. 2, we don't have all the answers. When I'm wrong, I admit it. And when I made a bad call, or if we lose a game, I'm not going to put it on the kid. I'm going to soak it and own it and show it a vulnerability. And we don't have all the answers. And I think kids get disarmed when you're not coming at them and you're, sharing the blame with them. And for me personally, I'm still working on, the biggest thing for me is finding balance in my life. I've been so immersed in coaching that sometimes I'm a little off balance. So everyone's got areas to work on, and letting the kids know that. And we have open conversations. I mean, I think we're all in good communication. And I think having been there for so long and coaching so many of these kids in the off season and when they were younger, like, it is a family. This isn't IMG. This is literally a family. I've known these kids since 2nd grade, and we're close. And I, go to dinner with their parents, and I see them at the coffee shop. I live a mile from the school. It's the prep school model of everyone living in a 3-mile radius, but the public school reality. So it's, it's a unique situation. And again, we wear the badge. We have a bullseye on our chest. Everyone out west wants to beat you, badly. It's the one game that they circle on your calendar. So you're getting everybody's best game. And we're trying to rep our school and the whole West, and kids take great pride in being the hunted. I mean, I tell the kids all the time, it's a compliment, but it's a huge responsibility. It's a burden. So there are no off days for you.
Yeah. So kind of transitioning a thought here, but and because it goes back to the reading, one of the things I talk about on the show, try to get my kids to do it, is, be a hunter of both inspiration and information. And the other thing I think about motivation, one of the guys that I listened to and got a certification under Brian Kane, mental performance coach, he's freaking great, right? I mean, if you check him out, he's awesome.
On Twitter.
But yeah, he talks about motivation as like brushing your teeth, right? And if you brush your teeth once a week, your breath's gonna smell like shit. Nobody's going to talk to you. Right. You got to do it every day, right? And motivation is the same thing, right? So if you get motivated once a week, how hard are you really chasing down your goals? And I think it sounds like you're probably doing a really good job of fueling these guys with inspiration. But what are you doing daily to lead them? And you said, like, if they don't know how much you care, they don't care at all what you have to say. And you got to have good energy and you got to be present. Like, you got to show up with your cup full to, pour into them. So what are you doing to consume inspiration and information daily? Are you, reading a lot? Are you podcast guy? What are you doing to take care of yourself so that you can be a better leader for them?
Yeah. I mean, that's minimum standard, is showing up motivated. I think for me personally, I've surrounded myself with one of the best, I would say the best coaching staff in high school in the country. I've got, two guys that have been around for 10 plus years that are savants. I've got 2 professional lacrosse players in Epple and Jules, who are the best at what they do in the entire world right now on our staff, and they're younger. And we've got, a goalie coach. And so that's first and foremost. We've got all of us are aligned in giving the best of what we have. Yeah. And for me personally, I'm a voracious reader. I'm always listening to podcasts. I'm always watching coaching videos or going to, coaching libraries, or whether it's Jamie Monroe's thing or IMLCA, or, going to visit colleges, just to see what else is out there. I'm constantly trying to evolve. And then day to day, yeah, I mean, I'm watching film whenever we're playing. I'm watching our film. I'm watching practice film. I'm getting new drills and practice plans. I mean, I'm a psycho.
I love it.
And I'm staying as fit as I can be, personally. And, I'm not going to ask the kids to run 2 miles if I can't do it. I mean, that for me is the thing. I'm not going to ask them to do something I can't or wouldn't do either.
Yep.
So I'm going to grind. I'm going to be all over you. But when I ask you to do it, no, I would do it too. And, Epple and Jules play and practice every day with the kids, which is a really unique experience to have those guys running our scout. And the kids get to not only get better, but see how the game is played properly. And the scout guys feel really included and valued because they're on the same team with those guys, and everything's competitive. And the biggest thing for us is like doing what's best for the team when it's not best for you. How do you make those scout guys buy in? So how do we get anything from our scout team without incentivizing it? And again, we make it very important if you're on the scout team. And so those guys feel valued because it is a huge thing for us. It's all those things. But again, I have a trouble with the guys that, don't read, don't watch film, aren't in shape, just yell at kids. It's like, you have no business. You have no right to coach, in my opinion. So it's like a sacred profession for me. And it's not really, there's not enough barriers to entry. Like, guys certain people shouldn't be allowed to coach or be near kids. So
I completely agree with that. And that's something, again, that I'm trying to really, by developing myself, raising the bar in coaching in my region, is to prove a point that coaches should be committed to becoming more qualified so that they can serve young people better, not just to be a better role model, but, you should have a baseline understanding of mental health if you're going to help these kids and the challenges they're going through, whether it's relationships, on field, off the field. I think there should be a level of expertise required if you're going to play a big role. Right. If you're just coaching one little showcase team or something and you're there for the day with them, all right, you just focus on lacrosse. But if you're going to be a head coach of a program or a club organization, you should be the real deal. I completely agree with that. Also, going back to you being a psycho of getting information, I think that's how we connected, because I followed Torrey Pine's Instagram because I was like, all right, there's one of the best high school teams in the country and I want to see what they're doing. And then I think, I used to post a ton of training videos, and then I think it's how we started a conversation. You were like,
I was stalking your training videos. I used all those drills.
I love it. That's great, man. That cracks me up. And, to that point, for all of my dedicated listeners, the millions out there, I have had this point come up before, like, well, I've had kids go, how'd you get connected to so-and-so? I shot him a DM,
Yeah.
like, how do we get connected? Instagram messaging, and I've already learned a ton for you. And it's really fascinating. And I think if we're not being intentional about taking advantage of the internet in that way, we're really missing out, because we're like 10 buttons away from being connected to somebody who could totally change your life.
Yep.
I love that.
There's been, I'm always like going to visit colleges or pick someone's brain, and, whether it's Bill Tierney or John Tillman or, whoever that's been nice enough to talk to me on the phone or let me watch their practice, or like, who am I to not engage with other people? And like, that's what it's all about, really. It's just, the coaching tree. And I've got guys that played for me that are coaching, and God, the Tufts coaching tree. There's so many of the guys that I played with under Coach Daly that are now coaching in some capacity. We looked at it the other day. There's like 12 or 14 guys that are in college or high school coaching, and right now at the moment. So it's really what it's all about.
That's so cool. The other thing that you said about, and it makes me think, like, we got to ask ourselves, both being the leader of our own life, personal, but also in our organization, we have to ask ourselves the right questions, not just the tough questions, the right questions. And when you were posing that question, maybe I'm sure you're talking to your other coaches, how are we going to get the scout guys so fired up today? Right? Like, that's a question that to me is elite, like, versus like so-and-so starter, this and that, right? Like that's the right type of question. And I think I've talked about that before, having the skill set of asking ourselves the right question at the right time and being able to do that for your staff. So I do want to highlight that. And then the other piece, and maybe we can come back to that in a second, but the other thing too that you said that reminded me of that, I remember I saw Andy Shea speak at IMLCA after they won the championship. And he was talking about how he made a shift a few years back where he stopped communicating with the starters as much and really focused on the last guys of the depth chart. And he's like, who are the last 3 guys in the depth chart? And I need to talk to them today. And then the next day. And then as the last 3 rotates, like, he needs to be in constant communication with the bottom half of the roster. And I thought that was such a fascinating strategy. And what I did, I took my roster, and then just every day I would text 3 kids on the team as like a process, right? Like, all right, every day I got to text 3 kids, check in on them. What do you need? Man, what a game changer that was for me. But I've heard you kind of touch on that a little bit. Can you talk about, and I guess it goes back to the whole experience of the program, right? Taking care of each guy. But can you talk about that in the role of a leader and, really making sure nobody's left behind and just looking out for the guys who are not killing it on game day?
I mean, dude, it's amazing what or how much more you can get out of a player or person if they feel appreciated or valued. It's so simple. It's really so simple, but you get caught up, you get busy, you end up focusing on, certain players or the wrong things. And, you're only as strong as your weakest link. Andy Shea's whole thing that year was, we only need everybody. That was their saying. And it's, it's true. The guys 30 through 50, if not engaged or inclined or bought in, will ruin your culture. Totally. They're actually more important than 1 through 30 in a lot of sense. So it's just part of the deal. I mean, I think that's sort of, for a lot of people, it's just an inherent trait that you care about everybody. And when I was a teacher, I was as friendly, or if not more friendly, with the dorky, uncool kids as I was the popular kid. And my brain doesn't work like that. And so, the whole no child left behind model, it's natural, but it's crucial. Like I said, like those guys, the ones that are disenfranchised or unhappy, they have the power to ruin your culture. And so how do you get them bought in? And honestly, like, depth charts are a great thing too. The guys don't think they're written off for the whole season, that they do well, they can move up and down. And as long as kids feel like they're getting a fair shake, I think you have their attention too a little bit.
Yeah. It also, it reminds me of Above the Line, Urban Meyer's thing. And, and like the way that I kind of like that 10-80-10, right? Like the top 10 guys in the pack, like if they're, are they going to pull the next 80 guys, or is it the bottom guys pulling them down? And I remember reading that early this fall. It was like in September. And I was like, man, this really makes sense. And I pulled a couple of my seniors aside and I shared like an article with them about it. And I was like, who are our top 10 guys? Yeah. Because we need to identify them and we need to start pulling the rest. And they were like, we can only identify 7. And I'm like, okay, well, we don't have 100 people. So this is okay. 7's okay for a 35-man team. But like, can we get 3 more? Who are the next 3? And they were like, okay, I think it's these guys. And I was like, all right, and who's our bottom 10 based on their behavior up to this point? And they were like, no, they were like, boom, boom, boom. They knew 3 guys right away.
Always the case.
Totally.
Always.
And I was like, all right, well, listen, like I'll speak with them. You guys can speak with them, but let's just really, I want you to put your energy into these next, cause I was like 3 guys. I'm like, find those other 7 guys. And every day, just understand you are pulling that next 80% of the team. Is that something you were shaking your head. So is that something you're familiar with and you have used?
100%. I think this year was one of the more rewarding years in my coaching career. And it's not about wins and losses. It was about, we had some squirrely seniors that just weren't buying in and were those bottom 3 guys. And at the end of the year, they came full circle. They finally surrendered and bought in and gave in to the coaches and whoever, and the captains who were hard on them. They were seniors, these kids, mind you. And they were the ones that were in tears when we won. And this program has changed my life. And you guys were the best. When I fought with those kids for the first month every day, it was awful. But that to me, in a lot of ways, was really like, I couldn't believe it. Like, I'm looking back on the championship game. This one kid in particular had 3 goals, ended up being our leading scorer. And he's the first person, if he was here with me now, would be like, yeah, I was brutal. And, and again, I see a lot of myself in him and needing some tough love and some people pulling him, but then unleashing the potential. And this kid really had a breakout season. And, he'd be the first one to tell you, like, I owe it to the program. And I finally listened. But that book is amazing. I have that book on my bookshelf and I have like the whole thing underlined. I'll underline it. All of a sudden the whole thing is marked up, but that one's a good one.
Yeah, totally. That's such a rewarding thing. And I think challenging, challenging as a coach too. It's not easy, in reflection. It's like, yes, like, of course it was worth it to stay on this guy, but super challenging to do. And again, the parents, coaches, people in the professional world that hear this, like, it's always going to be worth it if you see somebody rise up to their potential. And if you're a part of that. And yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I'm focusing on my coaching right now, just on the one-on-one setting. And, had a kid who was really beating himself on the field, afraid of making mistakes. And he called me on Saturday and he's like, Coach, I had 7 goals today. And I was like, no, it's not just the goals. It's the fact that he was able to be like, I was playing free. And he was playing in a little prison in his head because he was stressed. And I was like, I felt like I'd won a championship. Like, I mean, I was really fired up. And, in sharing that, it reminds me, I've had this conversation with people before, and I'm a pretty happy guy. I try to build my life around happiness. And I've had people like, oh, like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I reflect. I go, well, I help people every day. I build it in my profession. I'm a coach. Yeah. Well, I serve others. I feel pretty good. And my problems are pretty insignificant. You should start coaching. And I've had friends, I'm like, you should get back into coaching football. And I had one friend in particular who was at a tough place in his life. And he started volunteering at the high school that we went to. Dude, like, there was a huge shift in him within weeks. And so it really goes both ways, but really fascinating just being able to help people and building our life around it.
These kids will keep you young. And really all it is education through sport. I mean, everyone's in the coaching profession is a teacher. Yeah. John Danowski always says it, but just because we're not in the classroom is the field. It's education through sport. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it isn't easy. There was a lot of times when I was like, I'm going to bench this kid. I'm going to do that. And the seniors from last year came back because, they're like, what happened to, so-and-so and so-and-so? How did they change? And it's like, that's what you want to hear. It's like, we did it, man. We did it. We didn't give up.
I love it.
America. Yeah.
Absolutely love it. When you go back to what were the core values of the program again?
Character, culture, and community.
So I'm assuming, wow. So that's kind of like, just builds up, right? It's like the personal, the character side of it. The culture is the team community or habits and the way we're living up to it. And then the community is like, now you're going out to serve others. Is that kind of the model there?
Yep. That was kind of it. They all sort of dovetail into one another. But those were the things when we took the program over, like I said, I actually had taken the program over. The kids were, like I said, weren't doing great. And it had resulted and ended in a drunk driving fatality with a bunch of kids in the team. I mean, which was, an accident, whatever, but it was just sort of the icing on the cake of like the house of cards underneath it that a lot of things needed to change. And so those 3 pillars were, what we focused on. None of it had to do with lacrosse.
Yeah. That's an extremely challenging and tragic event.
It was
wild, but one of the questions that I wanted to ask, and maybe it's a different thing, but maybe it is that, like, has there been a time when you can reflect on it could be your personal life, community, it could be with Torrey Pines, where you've come across some adversity and, you've been able to transform it into having a positive effect moving forward? Because I mean, working with kids, right? Kids get injured, kids make a mistake. And, you know, it's our job to be like, okay, well, here's where it is now. And this is what you can learn from it and move forward. And it's a conversation I find myself having often. And I think it's an important one to be skilled in. Like, how quickly can you take somebody going through a hard time and help them have strategies to move out of it? But is there something, and maybe it was as a player, maybe it's that experience, but is there something where you've come across some adversity and now you look back and you're like, wow, that was a huge motivator, a Kickstarter into growth for you or for a team?
I think it's twofold. I think when, personally and for kids, when they're going through something off field, lacrosse should be their safe place. It should be their outlet. It should be their form to let out aggression and be creative and sort of define themselves. And the team should be their family. So when I had a couple of tough incidents when I was a player, I had my best seasons because it just was my safe place. When guys get injured, that's the one I've struggled with. I mean, I think, the ACL injury, which has become one of the most common things, is such a mental drain. It's more mental, the recovery, than it is physical. And the injury part, when you have an issue, but you can't immerse yourself in the team because if anything, you feel like secluded from the team. That's where I've been challenged with kids and trying to help them, stay the course. And that's been a little bit unique and difficult because it's tough. You can only give them so many jobs, or they're going to rehab and missing practice, or they're just sitting in practice and they're not part of the team, or, that's been a unique challenge, I think, to help kids with, that I still struggle with a little bit.
Yeah. In regards to that one, and each person deals it differently. I mean, for me, getting surgery my freshman year, having an absolute disaster of a freshman year in college, and it ending with me getting surgery, it was completely the catalyst to intense change in my life. And I look back on it, and I had this conversation the other day with an athlete. I go, I actually have said it so many times that it's the best thing that ever happened to me that I can't look back and be like, oh, it was so, like, I don't even, it was hard those first few weeks when you can't move your arm, like, it sucks. But it's like, I've actually gone back and taken out and extracted so many positives that came from it. I can't even look back and be like, I wish it didn't happen, but the injury piece, especially the ACL, I mean, that's something that people need to rally around a player and serve them in that moment. And then again, that's like, ask yourself the right question. How do I get so-and-so involved? Because right now he's not only dealing with not playing, but does he feel like he's a part of the team, So that'll be a challenge. I'm sure I have no doubt that that's something, if you feel like that's something you need to improve on, you'll figure out a way, you'll get better at it. And hopefully, we start having less injuries and kids are, trainers are taking better care of them, or whatever it may be. So I wanted to ask some questions about the program. And are you still doing that with these guys? I don't know if you're able to this year with COVID and whatnot, but I'm just personally curious. And you're one of the only high school teams that I've seen do it. And it's like something where I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, I want to do that so bad, either as a player or as a coach. But I could see a lot of people being resistant to it. So can you talk about what that is and, how it's helped your guys' program, what the experience has been?
Yeah, no, we've worked with Keith Wilford a lot, and he's more of a mental psychology guy behind the scenes, sort of like the psychological piece, that kind of like what you're doing. And then I had the program when I was at Tufts, and so we brought him out, and they tone it down a little bit for high school, but it's still really intense. And kids have the incredible fear of the unknown, and they're like, the first thing every year is, when's the program coming? When are those guys from the military coming, or whatever they say? Like, it's like, relax, dude. But it's one of those things that, like, it's so valuable because our kids have their own unique issues of entitlement and sort of like, not having to work for things and losing track of the message. The program does a great job of picking and choosing kids that we want to attack and test. And then also like helping kids find the lesson in why the boat won't blow up, or what the message is supposed to be about helping the weakest link in an event. And they prepare you to fail on purpose, and then they want to see how you react, and they teach you the lesson. I think we've really liked what they've done. They've toned it down for the high school. The first year was a little bit too much, and I talked to those guys, but they've dumbed it down a little bit where our kids can actually understand the lessons, not get hurt, not drown, but still be really pushed out of their comfort zone is like an understatement. But it's funny seeing tough guys when they are about to drown and they're not that tough. And then they're the kid that they're, not best friends, but saves them in the pool. And it's like, all right, we're buddies now. But no, we've liked the program. And it's funny because, like we talked about earlier, rewarding the process and attention to detail of everything. I think if you look at one of our games, if you came as a fan and you just looked at the way our sideline was set up, with the way the sticks are organized, the way the bags are put, everything's perfect. You would know who's going to win that game before the face-off even happened. Or talk to our bus drivers after they drop us off on away games and what they say about our team, and how we leave a locker room, or how it's like, in the program is so good at, like, you can't skip a step and complete their tasks.
Mm-hmm.
They won't let you go back and do it again. You could do it 99 times. If you don't get the 100th, you go back and start at the bottom.
Yeah.
And, it's about not skipping steps, and the program is really great about, like, no, you can't overlook, A to get to C. So yeah, it's expensive, but we budget for it, and I think it's important enough. So
yeah, well, I definitely think it's having an impact. One of the other things I wanted to touch on, we talked about before we went live, if you want to call it that, with the West Coast Stars and the challenge that is getting all these families out on the East Coast for basically a month of the summer and going through the circuit so that they can play the best teams in the country and, go into the recruiting environment. And it was something I mentioned. I was like, yeah, I always assumed that would be challenging, but until, we had our own brief conversation, I didn't really realize how much of a struggle that potentially could be on a lot of families. And I think it's valuable to besides all my international listeners, because I know you're out there, probably a good base of the people are local, right? In Northern Virginia, DC, Maryland. And we're very, very fortunate that such great competitions here. I'm going up to a tournament in Delaware tomorrow, and I'm going to come back. I'll be back by dinner, and I think for some of my kids to hear, because I got families going, oh, it's such a struggle this summer. We're driving to Maryland. And I'm like, oh, yeah, it's so tough. And now I'm going to be like, did you listen to the podcast? Like, so can you touch about what that challenge actually looks like for people coming in from the West Coast?
Yep. There's so many challenges. It's, it's coming in with the time change, and you're flying in and you have to play a game the next day or two, and you're on the wrong clock, and you're living in a hotel, and, you don't have much practice time. The best thing about West Coast Stars is a bunch of nobodies from nowhere that are all banded together from the West, playing together to prove something, but we also don't get much practice time. So that is a unique challenge and makes things difficult a little bit. The cost barrier to entry, just forget about whatever the fees to the tournaments or the club team are. You have to get flights, you have to get hotel rooms, you have to eat out every meal, you have to rent a car. It's not cheap. And then it's tough for our kids because they'll send a highlight video and it'll be great. And they'll be like, well, who's that competition? I need to see the kid play live. Well, it's like, I'm giving you my word. This is a great video. We're a good team. It's like, no, I need to see him play. You got to come to this prospect day. He's got to go to that. It's like, so again, it's for the West Coast kid to get recruited. He almost has to do twice as many things, like in the regards of travel, events, proving himself. And it's hard. And then in the fall, it's like I always say, please don't give us an early game on Saturday, and please give us an early schedule so we can get our flights Sunday. Without fail, we'll fly in Friday night in the fall. We'll have an 8 o'clock game. So it's 5 a.m. for the West Coast kid. Great. It's wet out. It's cold. Oh, your kids didn't play well. Well, yeah, they flew the night before. It's 5 a.m. And then Sunday we have flights at 5, and I'll have the 3 o'clock game. And I'm like, guys, you make this so much harder. It's already hard enough for the West Coast people. So a lot of challenges, and the families, God bless them because they're committed and everyone's just trying to help their children. But I think the East Coast people really, they're very fortunate.
Completely. I'll definitely be sharing some of that experience and insights with my families because I hear it a lot, and again, everybody has their own struggles, but it's perspective, right? Because I know there's some families that I was talking to a parent the other day and they're like, yeah, we got to go up to Maryland this week and Baltimore. And I'm like 90 minutes. But now it's like, I was just talking to a buddy out in California and like, they're flying in and they're staying out here for 2 weeks to make it happen. Like this is a real, and they'll be like, oh yeah. So I think perspective is always a powerful tool for any of us at any time. So, oh gosh, what did I want to ask you there? Oh yeah. So the sport growing a ton, and listening to another podcast that you were on, I think that you've had a pretty big impact in your region doing that. But I kind of want to transition. What do you think the future of West Coast lacrosse looks like? Not as much. I mean, you can touch on what you've done out there and what other people have done, but like, what do you think the next 10 years look like? And also in regards to colleges, popping up? Because to me, it seems like, yeah, it might take a little bit of time, but it seems like a natural trajectory that more schools are going to get programs. And yeah, so what's your thought on the next 10 years for the West Coast lacrosse?
I mean, it's funny because if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have been like, by now the Pac-12 will be fully dialed.
Shit.
And here we are with, I mean, God bless Utah. They're doing some great stuff. And,
Yep.
and they've, if people want to follow suit, they've, their applicant numbers or whatever applications each year have gone through the roof since adding men's lacrosse. But I don't know. I couldn't tell you. The Title IX issues are interesting. With COVID, what does that do to athletic departments' budgets? I don't know that the college thing is going to happen anytime soon, which is a little bit depressing because, again, like there's so many kids out here that really don't want to go back to the East if they didn't have to.
Yeah.
If USC had a program, I could just recruit all the West Coast starters and make a team. I wouldn't even need to go get East Coast kids. And then, so it's hard. And because of that, the MCLA has become a really viable option. Kids want to go to Stanford or Cal Berkeley or University of Oregon, and they don't want to go to some small school in the East Coast. And I don't blame them at a certain level. And those teams have gotten really good and really competitive. And that's been a little bit of a positive. But, I think just more guys moving out West, more guys with coaching experience. And at this point, lacrosse has been going for so long on the West Coast that people that I coached are now dads. And so now you have the youth programs that are being coached by people that actually know the sport, not just a football dad that's blowing a whistle. Now a lot of these guys actually played. And so youth programs, I think, have really improved and are improving because people know what they're doing. And that's, like anything, it's pyramid. Like the foundation has to be proper, and that really is going to help the growth.
Yep.
But, you can play year round out here. So it does make it easier for kids to be, good at sports in a lot of ways.
100%. Yeah. I had a guy who flew in from Texas a couple weeks ago. His kid was playing with Madlax National and got my number from one of the kids' parents on the team. And he was like, "Hey, we're in town. We're here a couple days early. Like, can you get my kid dialed in?" We're training. They're from Dallas. Good people, great sessions. And I'm just talking to the dad after, and he's like, "Man, lacrosse is growing." He's like, "What's your plan? What's your long-term plan?" And I was like, I was planning on coaching this high school team for 10 years and then going on to college, but I don't know if that's part of the cards anymore. I'm gonna do my academy. We'll see what happens, but eventually I'll get into coaching college. He goes, "Yeah, man." He's like, 10 years from now, I could see UT down in Austin having a school. And I go, well, that right now, that's on my, I'm going to put that on my vision board, baby. Like, I love that. Sounds incredible. And it got me all excited, like thinking about all the potential schools that could have programs. And I was like, man, if I put myself in a position where I could be the first head coach at UT, hook them just in case the AD's listening, potential AD, you never know. I'll do great things in that program, but I got all fired up. So I got a question. And you just said USC, but if you could coach at any school in the country that doesn't have a program right now and start the program, which I imagine you would like to do that. Yep. I feel like that, or maybe take over Tufts one day or something, but not say Tufts is out of the picture. New program. What school do you think you'd like to start up?
I think the logical answer would be Stanford or USC, right? Okay. Those are kind of no-brainers. I think, you'd be able to recruit itself without having to do anything. I think like the heartwarming, like what's the real answer? Like maybe USD, because my roots are here, and it would be a little bit of a challenge to get USD to be, to be in the same conversation as USC or Stanford. So, but I mean, I think USC and Stanford would be unreal. But then again, everyone in the world will be applying for those jobs. So.
Dude, I think you got a good chance, my man. I really do. I really do. And I will fly out there and be your first assistant. Like, I'm locked, man.
Great. I mean, if you've ever been to those campuses too, it's like, yeah, they're pretty nice. So
I bet, dude. All right. Well, listen, I'm so grateful that we've connected. I really look forward to staying in touch, learning more from you. Hopefully we can link up when you're out here. I'll be in DC when you're on the East Coast for your tour. Is there any other thoughts that you'd want to leave the listeners with?
No, I just love building the community, talking to people that are like-minded like you and in it for the same reasons, and, bouncing ideas off and bouncing books you read off and drills. And, I love it. And like, yeah, creepily, that's how I met you, on stealing drills from you in Instagram. So
I love it. I'm really glad you did. And I would share my drills with you any day. So
I love it. Rats tonight. Yeah, man. But thanks for having me on. I appreciate the convo.
Heck yeah, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, Mike. Peace.